Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, Prime Minister Netanyahu wraps up his trip to the U.S. What are Israel's next moves? Plus, analysis from Chris Mitchell and CBN President Gordon Robertson on Iran and the sweeping changes coming for the Middle East. And conservative voices rising up in Europe. Hungary hosts a CPAC summit. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Julie Stahl. The Israeli delegation is returning home as high-level talks in Washington wrap up with no announced breakthrough. Meanwhile, regional threats are multiplying from Iran to Gaza to the Red Sea. Our correspondent Chuck Holton brings the latest.
Heavy fighting is ongoing across Gaza as Israeli forces press deeper into Hamas strongholds. Since the end of the last ceasefire in the middle of March, 41 Israeli soldiers have been killed, bringing the total during the ground war to 448. In Judea yesterday, an Israeli man was killed in a stabbing attack at a shopping center. Sources allege the two assailants were members of the Palestinian Authority security forces. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has now departed Washington, following meetings with President Trump and families of the hostages.
We're trying to achieve the release of half of the hostages in exchange for a 60-day ceasefire. If Hamas does not meet our terms through negotiations, we will achieve them by force.
Meanwhile, Israeli officials believe part of Iran's 60% enriched uranium stockpile survived last month's joint airstrikes, buried too deep to be destroyed, although it would be difficult for Iran to remove it. Israel may be quietly planning a new wave of strikes on Iran. And in the Red Sea, Houthi militants have resumed missile and drone attacks, threatening commercial shipping and prompting Israel to call on the U.S. to renew airstrikes against Houthi positions in Yemen. From Jerusalem, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
I'm joined now by our intrepid reporter, Chuck Holton. Chuck, thanks so much for that report. What do you make of this? It seems like nothing really happened. Do you think something happened?
The visit with Netanyahu and Trump, obviously a large part of that was political theater. And it was a victory lap after the 12-day war and the attacks against Iran. But we don't know exactly what went on behind the scenes there. And I think it's likely that they discussed an ongoing threat from Iran and what to do about it. So we've seen the Iranians, according to Reuters reports, starting to rebuild their air defense capabilities, maybe even starting to dig out some of those nuclear sites that were bombed and try to recover some of the uranium that was highly enriched that was buried under there. And that being the case, Israel has maintained all along that it will retain the right to strike at Iran if it thinks that those threats are coming back. And so that may happen sooner rather than later. And I can imagine that that was on the agenda as Trump and Netanyahu were talking about it.
Yeah, they were both so happy about the results, although they didn't say a whole lot.
Yeah, a lot of glad-handing and backslapping at this.
Yeah, so it seems like they're on the same page, and there's something they're not telling everyone.
Right, and they also made very clear to the press that they're on the same page when it comes to what's going on in Gaza and a ceasefire. Of course, Steve Witkoff is being optimistic and saying that they may get a ceasefire within the week, but it is also being made very clear by Prime Minister Netanyahu after those meetings with President Trump that Trump and I are on the same sheet of music and we want a deal, but not at any price. And so it's important that the pressure be maintained on Hamas to get them to the table. And I think we're seeing that in Gaza. As Prime Minister Netanyahu was in Washington meeting with leaders there, the aerial attacks and the ground attacks in Gaza were ramping up to unprecedented levels. And so there've been some really major fighting across, especially northern Gaza and Beit Hanun and places like that. So I think all of that is carefully calibrated to push Hamas to come to the table and actually make a deal.
Yeah, they certainly haven't started a ceasefire yet. Yeah, a lot of fighting going on.
So well, I think when it comes to what's happening in the Red Sea, the Israelis have been pushing the United States to continue to strike at the Houthis because the Houthis are ramping up. And I think that it's very possible we might see an attack on Iran sometime in the near future.
Yeah, probably. Thanks so much for your insights, Chuck.
Sure.
The changes are coming so swiftly in the Middle East, you almost need a scorecard to keep up. Our bureau chief, Chris Mitchell, was at CBN headquarters this week and debriefed with CBN President Gordon Robertson about recent events. Here's their conversation.
Turn to Iran, and again, a huge pressure for ceasefire, end of hostilities, but yet the regime, the Ayatollah, stays in power. Isn't that just kicking the can down the road? Aren't we going to see them try to rebuild the nuclear program, rebuild all the arsenal, and come back with very deadly intent to Israel?
Well, they said that pretty much as soon as the ceasefire was over. We have a right to enrich uranium. We want to do it. We're going to rebuild. We're going to kick out the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, and we're going to go ahead and do what we want to do. I would say how it played out in some of the people we talked to in Israel, that it was a premature ceasefire, and it did leave the can to be kicked down the road. And it seemed to be so close to a regime change, to be able to topple the regime and to let the people of Iran finally be free. So there was a mixed feeling about when the war was ended after 12 days, maybe on the cusp of a regime change. And there was a sense that maybe there was an opportunity missed.
Well, many of our viewers don't know that immediately after the ceasefire, there was an incredible crackdown on the Christians in Iran and all political opposition. And so the regime definitely made sure there could be no opposition going forward.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe people should know, and I think our viewers may know, that there is a great, vibrant underground church in Iran. Some people say the fastest growing church in the world, and many people coming to faith through dreams and visions. And it's very important to pray for them and pray for the opposition, that perhaps there can be regime change there to finally let these people be free after 40 years.
During these turbulent times, what's your hope? Is there any hope for Abraham Accords, the movement in Hebron to say we're leaving the Palestinian Authority? Are we on I guess the verge of an enormous breakthrough for peace?
I think we are on the verge of really a new Middle East. I mean, there was a man named Avi Dichter. He's a member of the Knesset, member of Likud, and he said, we are maybe really seeing a new Middle East that's been talked about for years. We may see Saudi Arabia come in. We may see Lebanon and Syria come into the Abraham Accords. And as you referred to, 5 sheikhs in Hebron actually said, they want to be away from the Palestinian Authority, they want to be free of them, and they want to join the Abraham Accords and be part of Israel. So we really may be on the verge of a historic change in the Middle East, a real window of opportunity, and why it's so important to be praying for President Trump, Prime Minister Netanyahu. These are historic times. And if you can realize what happened since October 7th, and Iran was sort of the dominant player in the region, now they are gone, and Hamas and Hezbollah, the Houthis, are a shadow of what they were. So this could be a breakthrough of a new Middle East, and certainly a time to be praying.
I'll sound a cautionary note. Yes, there's tremendous avenues for breakthrough, the advance of Abraham Accords, but I've got to point back to what the Ayatollah did when he started invoking the Khyber and a small Muslim force defeating a very large Jewish community. In the early days of Islam, the ideology seems to remain, and it may go dormant, but it's still there. It's still under the surface, and if they stay in power, is it going to be 2 years, 4 years? What's the time? It's like there's a ticking time bomb there.
And they can be very patient.
Yes, and they have been. All right. Well, Chris, thanks for the insight. And please be praying for the Middle East. Pray for very unusual wisdom for our president and our State Department right now. These are crucial days, and crucial days for the generations ahead. Wouldn't it be wonderful if the Middle East turned peaceful and wasn't exporting terror all over the place and all this radical Islam that seems to glorify murder and mayhem and some strange way of worshiping their God? It makes no sense to us in the West, but it seems to make a lot of sense to them.
Conservatives from Hungary and around the world gathered in Budapest recently to encourage their fellow Europeans in the fight to take back their countries and realign them with their original biblical values. Here's the story. In the opening ceremony, participants sang the Hungarian national anthem and then listened to the Star-Spangled Banner. Here at CPAC Hungary, conservatives have come together from Hungary, Europe, and around the world to declare their support for Judeo-Christian values of God, homeland, and family.
We managed to build up the broadest coalition of patriotic forces here at CPAC Hungary, not only from a European perspective, but from a global one. CPAC Hungary's goal has always been to establish a global but anti-globalist platform internationally.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, who's helped lead a conservative movement sweeping across Europe, even in the face of legal challenges from the European Union, addressed the conference.
Today we have the strongest patriotic, sovereignist political leaders of Europe. In fact, many of them are here from America. They're the toughest, the most determined, and the most experienced leaders. They're those who have been fighting for their country in international politics for decades, people who have endured countless attacks, savagery, and smear campaigns. There are those here who know there is no victory without suffering.
Orbán sees Trump's return to the White House as a positive example for conservatives worldwide.
The Trump tornado has swept the world and completely changed it. He has given hope back to the world. We're no longer drowning in a sea of woke. We're not overrun by migrants. He gave us back the hope of a normal life. He gave us back the hope of peace.
President Trump sent a video greeting praising Orbán as a great leader.
And as far as CPAC is concerned, all over the world, they're respected as an organization. They have conservative values, but the conservative values are very good values. And then I can tell you, they want strong borders, they want law and order, they want all of the things that you want.
CPAC Hungary Chairman Miklos Santo described the conference as a success, with 600 international guests from 6 continents, despite what he called efforts to cancel them.
They tried to cancel Donald Trump in the US before the presidential elections and before the campaign. They are trying to cancel Bibi Netanyahu in Israel. They are trying to cancel all of the right-wing forces in Europe, in France, in Germany, in Austria, and they are doing the same in Hungary as well.
Santos sees one of the biggest positives being connecting people with the same philosophy and providing them a platform.
We not only share the same values, but we also share the very same enemy. And additional, we can show them the Hungarian recipe, how to protect God, homeland, and the family, how to protect, at the level of the Constitution, our Judeo-Christian heritage, how to protect the borders and national identity, how to protect the family, and how to protect the children and the marriage from this woke insanity.
Parliamentarians and others attending the conference agreed.
I think CPAC does such an incredible job bringing together conservatives from around the world and allowing us to share important ideas with each other, but also get to know each other as individuals so that hopefully we can find ways to collaborate around the world.
I think it's very important to stick together to send out the message that patriotism is alive, that democracy is going to be safe through patriotism and patriots, and it's to go out and tell all the folk, leftist, globalist, Marxist, all together, that we are growing, that we're getting stronger by the day.
When you see the onslaught that we're all dealing with, whether it's wokeism, whether it's big tech, whether it's the globalists or the European Union in this case, it's like our work is really cut out for us, and we have to find each other amidst the mess.
Hebron has been in the news recently because of the 5 Arab sheikhs who just called for the city to pull out from the Palestinian Authority and be governed by Israel. This didn't sit well with other groups, as evidenced by the torching of one of the sheikhs' Mercedes. The battle for control in Hebron has been going on for a long time, and it's primarily over the public perception about this city where Jews and Arabs live and work together relatively peacefully. Here's a story from a few years back, brought to you by the late Scott Ross. He interviewed Yishai Fleisher about the media war in Hebron, and it gives context to the ongoing situation.
Hebron is home to the Cave of the Patriarchs, where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their wives are buried. Hebron in Hebrew and Al-Khalil in Arabic both come from the root word meaning friend. But that's far from this city's image. At times, it's been a hotbed of terrorism, but that's not the whole story. Yishai, this is the area that has been described as a ghost town. Everything is boarded up, closed down. Why?
In 1994, it was decided by the Israeli army that they had to close the stores. There's still Arabs living here. What was happening is that terrorists used the mass of people that was walking here to hide themselves and to perpetrate attacks. Now, it's not a beautiful sight, but the Arabs that had the stores here were moved to the much more Arab part of town. They were compensated.
Yishai Fleisher is spokesman for the Jewish community here.
And there's always 2 wars. There's a physical war, and the physical war was stopped. But exactly where the physical war was stopped, the narrative war was created and started. What do I mean by that? Well, I deal with a lot of media here. And what they want to do is they want to capture one shot here. The Israeli army next to closed stores, and if they could catch a kid with Jewish sidelocks, then they have exactly the story, which is the settlers are using the IDF, the Israeli army, to ethnically cleanse Hebron.
Climb to the top of this building and you get an entirely different view. Stretching for miles, Hebron houses about 200,000 Arab residents. As the most prosperous city in the Palestinian-controlled West Bank, it's also home to about 1,200 Jews.
Here, for example, is what some of the propaganda that an organization
Ghost town, Israel's separation policy, forced eviction of Palestinians from the center of Hebron. That's not true.
Well, it's true on one street, right? One tiny little street. But the rest of Hebron is actually the wealthiest, most successful of all Arab cities here, one of the most successful cities in the whole Middle East.
Are there businesses here? Big business?
There's 17,000 businesses and factories here. In fact, this is an ironic truth. Basically, there's 5 billion shekels of exports from Hebron, from Arab Hebron to Israel every year.
Even with the commercial ties, relations are mixed. The Arabs that live here don't want you here.
There are many Arabs who think that way. Those are those who have succumbed to the jihadist ideology. Yeah. It's important to know that there are many other Arabs who think that the Palestinian Authority is corrupt, that jihad is not good for their kids, that they don't want this life. They don't want this life for their children, and in fact see Israel as actually a great vision for their future.
One aspect often ignored and even denied is the Jewish people's ancient connection to Hebron.
That conflict is over who's got rights to this land, who's going to hold on to this land.
Right, and Hebron goes back biblically how many thousands of years?
Well, it goes about 3,800 years.
38.
And the whole book of Genesis gets sealed off here in Hebron. When Jacob is dying down in Egypt, he says to his children, don't bury me here in Egypt, bury me back in Hebron, where Abraham and Sarah are buried, where Isaac and Rebekah are buried, and where I buried Leah.
The story is under the building. These stairs that we're looking at are 4,500 years old?
But this is really 700 years before Abraham. And Abraham is going to walk up here and he's going to negotiate with the Hittites to buy the tombs of the father and mother, actually a cave at the field at the far end of town. Our enemies understand the spiritual significance and the anchoring of this history to our peoplehood. So their whole effort right now is to somehow undo that connection. And one of the ways that they have done that is with the usage of international organizations like UNESCO.
2 years ago, a United Nations agency declared the cave an endangered Palestinian heritage site. What's the future? What do you see?
There's a big question about what's going to be the future of the Palestinian Authority. There used to be, about 100 years ago, something called the Jewish question. Now we know the Jewish people are back in Israel, and they're going to be in Israel. Mm-hmm. I think now there's an Arab question. What's going to be with the Arab peoples? Are they going to figure out a way to deal with their cousins, the Jews? Or are they going to keep calling us occupiers and foreigners and going to continue this 100-year war, which has not really fared very well for them? Because I think the Jewish people are here to stay.
Scott Ross for CBN in Hebron.
As you could see from our last story, Israel is more of a melting pot of cultures than often gets reported. And of course, God loves them all. This next story shows an Arab single mom whom CBN Israel was able to help thanks to donations by our generous partners.
Amira, a Palestinian Christian, is a divorced single mom who lives with her son Ramsey just outside Bethlehem. The struggling Palestinian economy makes finding work hard enough, but being a single mom makes it an even bigger challenge.
In Palestine, we don't have a law that protects single moms or like social security that I can go and get some like assistance from. So the moment I became a single mom, I had to find my way.
Amira worked 2 to 3 jobs just to make ends meet.
It was like 24/7. I don't have a Sunday, I don't have a Monday, I don't have a Saturday. And then to take care of my son, to cook for him, to do his homework, to take care of him, to give him some time, to go out with him.
To make things worse, Ramsey suffered from a debilitating eye condition, causing him headaches. He had trouble reading and struggled with low self-esteem and experienced bullying at school.
My son has squint eyes. He has like problems in his eyes. He needed an urgent surgery. So I took him to the hospitals and we put the date for the operation.
CBN Israel was able to sponsor Ramsey's life-changing eye surgery. And upon a follow-up visit, the CBN team discovered that Amira was sleeping on a mattress on the floor, and they lacked basic furniture and appliances. CBN Israel jumped into action.
When they saw my situation, they helped me more, and they provided lots of help, like food. I had some stuff in my house missing, like a bedroom, and they offered me they bought me a bedroom, they bought me an oven, and I'm so grateful and thankful. They helped me so much, and until now I found a job finally.
These gifts helped Amira get back on her feet and restored her hope. Ramsey's eye surgery was also a great success, and his confidence soared as a result.
His eyes are amazing. So yeah, I'm like very thankful that I decided to do this operation, and I'm thankful for CBN for helping me to do that for sure.
What a wonderful story made possible by our CBN partners. That's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and you can access CBN content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. And don't forget to sign up for our email blast so you can continue to receive our CBN content. Please keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem and for Israel during this critical time, and that all the hostages can come home safely. And remember, the God who's watching over Israel, and you and me, neither slumbers nor sleeps. I'm Julie Stahl. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.